Hey everybody, it's episode 2 of the Back to School mini-series for UIO, the podcast for teen girls. Hugs to everyone, even if they are virtual, and thank you for joining UIO, the podcast for teen girls. It is for you and about you inside out. I am Sonja Lewis, your host. Today we're talking about the loss of our way of life and how to navigate the new normal. Of course, the loss of life of a loved one is perhaps the most painful experience a human being can endure. And we'll be looking at the grief associated with mourning in another episode during this back to school series. So please keep an eye out and an ear out for that one. For now, we'll look at the loss as a result of the global pandemic, which has seen us cut off from our family and friends, the arts completely shut down, sport paused, and athletes returning to empty stadiums, students learning from home, and with social distancing rules in place for the foreseeable future, we don't know when we'll be able to get up close and personal again with friends and family without the worry of contracting and spreading COVID-19. We are clearly in the throes of a century-defining age, and with many people yearning to go back to how things were, it's difficult to acclimatize to this new normal, yet it's crucial that we do in order to make progress. To help us make sense of it all is coach and public speaker Suzie Lavington. Suzie works with the Art of Brilliance, a company that specializes in training and development to develop people into a more positive, motivated, and brilliant version of themselves. She has co-written the book A Girl's Guide to Being Fearless alongside Dr. Andy Cope, due to be released in November 2020. And we are incredibly grateful to have her share her insight on the show today. Welcome, Suzie, and thanks for joining us on UIO.
Oh, it is such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's so much going on. I mean, the vast majority of the population around the world will have seen their lives change dramatically during 2020 due to the impact of COVID-19. And whether it's via enforced lockdowns, where our liberties were stripped back to the basic necessity to just visit the supermarket and exercise for an hour per day, which we really needed to do, or the loss of daily visits with family and friends and planned vacations and social events. But I think even larger than this is the loss of several rites of passages for many people. But as we're talking about teenage girls today and teenagers, in the US, for example, we have students who haven't been able to celebrate the end of their studies with graduations and proms canceled. There will have been seminal events like Sweet 16s and 21st birthday parties, also scaled down and canceled the world over. And in the UK, of course, students would typically study their entire lives and reach an apex where they're expected to sit exams and are then judged on how they perform during this period. But because of the pandemic, it didn't happen. Exams were aborted due to the risk students posed to one another, and they replaced this very important experience by issuing grades based on their teachers' expectations of them. And of course, there was a little drama around that. But there's no question that this, along with not being able to graduate, has robbed so many students of a rites of passage that every generation before them and perhaps after will, have been able to experience or will be able to experience. What can we say to our teens who are grieving the loss of so much that is important to them?
Yeah, they've been through it, haven't they? They really have. I think the first thing to say is that you've every right to feel a bit down about it all. These are events that they're milestones that many young people go through their entire school careers really looking forward to. And to have those things whipped away is really quite gutting. So it's totally natural and expected to feel a bit cheated and a bit upset about the whole thing. So as adults, particularly, I think we need to be really understanding and accommodating of those feelings. It is a big deal for these young people, and we have to give those feelings a bit of space, because only when you let them feel a bit rubbish for a while will those feelings eventually pass. But once that upset has been given some space and some time, the most important thing is to help them through it and through to the other side to some better feeling emotions. And I think the way to do that is to help them reframe their thoughts about, the last few months and the events that they feel they'll have lost out on, whether that be exams or, as you said, sweet 16s or 21st, etc. So we can say things like, you have been through, and what you've been through in the last few months, missing out on your exams or on your big birthday or on your graduation, has been so tough. And it's something only a special few will have gone through. So firstly, let me tell you that the whole country, in fact, the whole world, is feeling for your age group right now. Yeah, everyone knows what you've been through, but how resilient and strong you all are as a result. And everyone is really proud of you. So I think once we've all had a bit of a well-deserved wallow, the best thing to ask instead of why me is, okay, well, what next? And that immediately shifts your brain into a different space, from a shutdown place of isn't everything awful, straight into a more positive, solution-finding, forward-looking place. So, if it's your 16th birthday you've missed out on, for example, you are, and you're happy to have a belated celebration, you can set a new date maybe, and I know things are changing all the time, but you could perhaps, if it's in the distant future, find some funny ways to introduce social distancing at a party. So I went to a restaurant a couple of weeks ago where every other table they sat giant teddy bears in the seats instead of people. And you know what? It actually made for a really, really good night, and it added to it. Or you could scrap your 16th altogether and start planning your 18th and just enjoy the fact that you've got more time to make it more epic. And if it's a graduation that you've missed out on, you might want to do a reunion. It might be very small scale in a park, contact the teacher that might have been organising it. There's all these little things that you can do. And if you don't want to do or be involved in any of that, then just know this. And that is that occasionally life throws us some curveballs.
I think that's really good. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense, all the things that you're saying. It sounds like one key thing that's coming out of it is the importance of knowing that we are resilient as human beings. That's great advice. And that there are lots of things that you can do. Let's talk about friendship. And during our panel on how to stay safe in school during this era, we spoke to Olivia, a student based in the United States. She told us that she hasn't seen her friends in months. And Olivia still won't be seeing her friends because she's completely in virtual schooling. And we know friendship is vitally important to a teen's mental health, and so many are having to go without seeing their friends consistently right now. I want you to talk to us about how can our teen girls stay motivated when they are unable to see their friends consistently, or their sort of limitations and restrictions put on seeing their friends.
So, if you are in an area where those restrictions are still being enforced, or like you said, you haven't been able to see your friends because it hasn't been possible, then oh my gosh, make the most of technology. And honestly, I would be the first to say that wherever possible, live your life in real life and not through a screen. But if there is one period of time that we can thank our lucky stars for technology, it is right now. So, and all right, a Zoom call or a FaceTime isn't quite as good as a get together in the flesh, but it really is the next best thing because, we are social beings. And we survive and thrive through connections with others. And if I've had a tough week and I'm feeling down or depleted, or a tough month or a few months, as most of us are feeling right now, a night spent with my friends over Zoom or in someone's garden, it's all I need to feel on top form again. Yeah, it's like an instant recharge. And it might be that during lockdown, one or more of your friendships have slipped slightly. I think we can all say that. But like you say, friendships are so important and they take work. So they take a bit of effort and a bit of cultivation. So check in with friends and send them a quick message or a GIF or a voice note or however you communicate, and let them know that you're thinking of them. It takes seconds, but it means everything. And make dates to catch up, using technology, and stick to them. I think as well, when we're anxious and we're ruminating, all those things a lot of us have been doing during this period of time, talking gets your problems out. Yeah, it shines a massive light on them. Other people say, you're not crazy because I feel the same way. And our friends are great at doing that, aren't they? So just talking about them shrinks problems immediately. So actually, if you're feeling anything like that, I'd say talk to someone, talk to someone, talk to someone. And your girlfriends are the best people to do that with.
Absolutely. I think it's so key. And I agree with you that it's so important to still have a life offline as well. But as we know, during this period of time, technology has saved us. Living in the UK and having my family and very close friends in the United States, that's been a real lifesaver for me. But I want to talk a little bit about staying safe online and time management. We've explored in previous episodes the need to stay safe online, the importance of managing your time so that you're able to get your sleep, so that you're able to understand that everything that happens online is not necessarily real life. And as we move into a new age of socializing online, the risks have increased for losing sight of the values of managing your time online. What advice would you have for our teenage girls who are now completely relying on social media to socialize with their friends? Because I do think of Olivia, our teenage girl from the United States. She's a perfect example. She misses her friends and she is online much more than she would have ever been. What can you say to her in terms of keeping the balance?
Balance is absolutely the word. It is, balance and keeping in control. The device is in your hand or at your fingertips, and it's a case of you getting the best out of the device rather than it stealing the best from you, right? And we always have that choice, and we are always in control. And sometimes it might not feel like it. So yes, there are a few things you can do for sure. And social media and technology, just spectacular in so many ways, not least because of the connection thing that we've just spoken about. And used well, it is great. But there are some problems with it. You can be online for a few minutes doing something, then all of a sudden you get entangled. You get sucked up into, random videos and random posts. And, all of a sudden 45 minutes or an hour have gone past. And that is time that you are never going to get back. I think there are some things to do. And I've got some advice. And I think sometimes young people can feel like we hammer this advice into them. So it is a case of take it or leave it. But it is advice that works. And the trick is to wrestle back control. If you feel like that balance has tipped in the wrong direction or the other direction, the first thing really is making sure that everything you do on a device, whether that's your phone or a laptop, whatever, is intentional. And that means signing out of each app after you've used it. And that just means you can't just quickly jump on it when you're on your phone. It's not open. It's not easy for you to get back onto and into again.
That's good. I need that advice.
No, I know. It takes effort. So you kind of go, okay, all right, not today, or I'll do it later or whatever. And so many of us just sort of scroll without realizing. So that helps. If you sign out, then you've got to sign back in again. Actually, even better. Now, I know this might get some eye rolls. I know that some people might gasp at this or think, okay, well, that's not one for me. But again, it does work if you feel like that balance is tipped out. And that is deleting all social media apps from your phone altogether. So that actually you can only check them from a desktop. I know it's a biggie.
Makes me nervous, but you're right. It's good.
Yeah. I think, and like I said, it will freak a lot of people out. But I get that. I really do. It is just a suggestion that works, and it will make you feel calmer. It just will, because our phones are stuck to our hands a lot of the time. And if that is not for you, then at least turn all banner style or pop-up sound notifications off, and that just means you won't be a slave to the rings and the pings and the red dots, and that you'll feel more in control. And the next thing really is leaving your phone in your pocket or keeping it out of sight altogether when you're with humans, when you're with people in real life, and then you can give them your full focus and your full energy, which is what every single person deserves. And you get 100% out of the room and everyone in it. And then I just say, choose a couple of hours a day to just switch off, to just switch your phone off and then stick to it. And instead of thinking about it as I'm spending less time on my phone, think about it as I'm spending more time on my life.
That's great. I love all of it, particularly the advice about just getting rid of the apps. It's a bit scary, but I know for a fact I have one app on my telephone and I have become a slave to it. The rest of them I did get rid of. And so I love the advice. I'm going to get rid of the apps and just really put the phone away. And I love what you said about think of it as spending more time, in your life, spending more time with the people who you love. Because it is an opportunity to spend more time with the people who you actually live with. And when you're talking, you're talking. When you're eating, not looking at the phone. That's wonderful. Let's talk about getting out a little bit then. We've talked about the importance of living your real life, having that balance between social media or being online with your friends. But let's talk about exercise. We need to be out with nature. We need to exercise. We need to keep our bodies active. But so many teens love sport, and the preference will require contact sports with other people. And for others, their sport will be one that is played under a roof. Both types of sports are strictly off limits due to the COVID restrictions. I mean, we've seen professional sports go back, but we don't have the fans and the audiences. But talking about particularly contact sports like football and softball and baseball and that kind of thing. For teens who are really missing these activities, what advice do you have for them? How can they cope and be ready to return to their chosen sport? Talk to us a little bit about what they can do.
I think if previously contact sport has been your thing, you're going to find it a little bit tough having to miss out on that for the time being, or that as we used to know it for the time being. Definitely the important thing to remind yourself is that it's not going to be forever. This is likely to have been the first virus to have disrupted things on such a level in your lifetime, certainly has for me, but it's not the first in history. A kind of normality will resume and contact sport will be played again. And as you said, pro team, it's already been played, albeit behind closed doors without the crowds. But in the meantime, we're all having to just adapt and fill in the gap with other options that give us our fix. So maybe not quite in the same way, but in the next best way. And I get it, right? I am one of those people who finds exercising on their own really boring. I'm competitive. I like being part of a team, and I like the way the narrative of any sort of game plays out. So if you're hankering after sport, ask yourself, what is it you love best about it? And if it's the friendships and the camaraderie, until you can play that sport again, see if you can do a different type of exercise with your teammates. Yeah, whether it's in a person or online. I'm currently doing a morning workout with a group of friends daily on Zoom, and it saves me. If you're hoping to play sport on a serious level, and this is another thing, because I know there are lots of young people out there that are worried about their skills slipping and worried about their fitness sliding, just know that everyone is in the same boat. So my friend's son is currently at a football academy playing for the youth side of a first division team. So he's hoping to be picked for the first team this season. Yeah, and yes, they've been given a program to follow during the break, but he knows his fitness and his skills aren't where they would be if this hadn't happened. Yeah, so professional athletes are feeling it too. Everyone is just doing what they can to plug that gap until a new normal resumes, and it will. So take comfort in that.
I think that's great advice for anyone who is going through this, particularly what you said about worrying about their skill slipping, being able to continue to practice, to interact as much as you can, and understand that you're not alone.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, other people are sitting there getting better than you.
No, but you know what? Absolutely, you can keep your fitness up, you can keep your skills up, and the body's amazing. Muscle memory is incredible. Once you get back to it, everything will start feeling familiar again. Yeah, and you'll slide back into it a lot easier than perhaps you think you will.
This is great. Suzie, I want to talk to you a little bit about your book, your wonderful book that you've co-written with Dr. Andy Coate, A Girl's Guide to Being Fearless. And I want you to talk to us about, how do you define being fearless, and what are your main tips to help girls achieve this state of mind?
Okay, that is a big question. That's the question. The book, we dedicate a lot of pages to exploring the concept of fear and the idea of being fearless. So, straight from the off, in the opening chapter of the book, we explain that being fearless isn't actually a thing, right? So the title is almost a bit tongue-in-cheek, or it's supposed to get us thinking. So you can't really be a properly functioning human being and have no fear at all. It's a perfectly normal and sometimes useful emotion. So feeling fear means that you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and trying new things, which is what we want to be doing more or less every day. So the book isn't about banishing fear. It's quite the opposite. Actually, it's about us pushing ourselves to do the things that give us those little flurry of jitters, because that's how we all grow. But how to find your calm when you're in those nerve-wracking situations, so you can get yourself into a good state of mind and do the things that you need to do to the best of your ability. So it's really... Calm comes from high self-esteem. So from knowing that whatever happens, whether you are good at something, whether you're not good at something, you are all good. Yeah, you're valued, you're worthy, and everything will be fine. There are so many things that you can do to build your self-esteem. And we talk about lots of them in the book. But again, it comes back to your thoughts, because your thoughts dictate your emotions, and then your emotions drive everything you do or don't do.
That's really good stuff. Everybody can take some wonderful advice from that, starting with me, because I think that it's so key to realize that we are driving what's happening with our thoughts. And so that's really good stuff, Suzie. Thank you so much. Let's take anxiety out of the equation for a moment if we can. It's a lot of anxiety going on, and that's been some really wonderful advice that you've given about how to approach things. There will be clear issues of motivation moving forwards. Students are back in school now, and I know some are still going back, but many are already back, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Threats of lockdown again. Some schools are closing temporarily, for example. How do you keep motivated under this uncertain cloud?
Yeah, it's really focusing on what you can and can't control, right? So if you need to, if you're worried about a particular situation, then literally I find that writing 2 lists is a good thing to do. Like, what is my business? What can I work on and what can I control? And what's the rest of the world's? And all the stuff that I can't control. And, the stuff that you can't control, that list needs to be screwed up and thrown away, or whatever it is that you need to do just to put it to bed. And then you can focus on the things you can. And as you said, actually just taking those little action steps on the things that, whether it's a little action step towards your career, or making contacts, or networking, or doing all those things that actually you can do online safely from home, etc. And actually, can I share a little mind trick with you that helps me
Sure.
if I've got something that I really need to do or want to do and I haven't got the motivation to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so there's a little mind trick that I've found really helpful throughout my life. And I've only actually come across it in the last few years, but it's helped me ever since. And it's from a lady called Mel Robbins. But very sort of briefly, she worked out that whenever an event happens that requires you to take an action, you should take, but you don't want to take, you haven't got the motivation, you're losing your mojo. She says time begins to pass while you mull that over, right? And she says the longer you leave it before taking action, so the longer the gap of time, the more likely it is that gap gets filled with dread and anxiety and self-doubt and overwhelm, and those feelings get the better of you. Yeah, so event happens, so you need to have a difficult conversation with someone, you need to speak up in class, or speak up online if your classes are online.
Yes.
You need to ask something of someone that intimidates you, whatever it might be, and you give yourself too much time to think about it, you will talk yourself out of it. So what's really, really interesting is that she sort of says, count backwards from 5. And it's a really laughably simple concept, but it works every time, because you get to the action before that fearful part of your brain gets a chance to talk you out of it. So you rediscover the version of you that you used to be before your brilliance got hidden under layer upon layer of self-made fear. And it's fantastic. Yeah. So basically count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then take one action. Yeah. It might be put your trainers on and go for a run. Once you've done that and you're out the door, the rest of the time takes care of itself. Yeah. You're there. Yeah. So it might be sit up in bed. A lot of people are finding it hard when the alarm goes off to get up and out of bed. Get to the action before your mind gets a chance to take you out of it, and just think about the first action step. And then your comfort zone won't see you for dust, because you'll just keep taking those steps that you need to take past that point. Have a tricky conversation.
I love it. I mean, we all need it. And I particularly think it's such a difficult time dealing with the uncertainties and trying to get motivated. That's great. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will get myself out of the door to go for a walk after this one. So that's great. We're coming towards the end of the interview, and I just want to again reiterate that there's so much anxiety going on. And The Guardian reported in May that anxiety had risen by 50% during lockdown, and that is pretty scary. And this percentage means that many people who've never had any mental health issues, or they didn't think they did anyhow, will be experiencing anxiety for the first time. Undoubtedly, this will include a portion of teenage girls within this percentage rise. What advice can you give to people experiencing anxiety for the first time? And along with that, what would you tell parents whose teenagers are experiencing anxiety for the first time? How can they try to reach out to them and to help them work through this?
Yeah, that's really important, actually, how the parents sort of come across, and if they're feeling anxious about it, because emotions, again, are contagious. So with parents, we can talk to our young people, to our children, teenage daughters, talk to them about the fact there is a massive positive in all of this, and that is that all children have been off for a long time, and the main priority of every single teacher and every single caregiver is going to be bringing everyone up to speed again, recapping a lot, knowing that they've been through the mill, and showing them grace and patience, and knowing it's going to take time to get everyone back on track. So no one is just going to expect to fall back into step. There will be more care and more nurturing and more support shown to our kids in school than ever before. And I think often the anxiety about returning to school is about everything being unfamiliar. And a lot of teens or young people feel that they have or will have forgotten everything. You know what? Our memory recall is incredible. And once they are back through those doors and they experience all of those familiar triggers and they open their books, they'll be surprised at how it all comes flooding back and how comfortable actually it all becomes. And morning routine, this is one thing I haven't really mentioned, particularly on the podcast. It is great, right? So how you start your morning will set you up for the day and how you'll feel for the rest of it. So get involved in that morning routine. You know, you can say to them, do you know what? I'm going to start a routine so that I get my day started really well. I'd love for you to join me. And, you know, it's hard to get teens involved in that sort of stuff. But if they aren't up for that, it could be, like I said, a little bit of exercise, going out. It could just be turning off the TV in the morning and blasting out some great feeling music and just getting the house a bit vibey before they go off to school. Yeah, so it's all those little things that you can do just to put their mind in an excited frame rather than, okay, so, you know, anxiety is all about being worried about the future. Let's get them excited about all the stuff that is coming their way that they can grab and all the things they need to be excited about their future for and all of those reasons. There are lots of them.
That is excellent advice, getting excited for the future. Suzie, any more hot tips for our teen girls on how to deal with the new norm?
I'll just leave you with a little tip for anyone who is feeling a little bit sort of anxious and parents are sitting on the sidelines going, oh my gosh, I don't know how to help my child. And so there is a tip that I have been given sort of fairly recently, but a friend of mine, her daughter was particularly anxious. She went back to school 2 weeks ago and she's actually close to 16. And her mum drew her a little button on the back of her hand, quite close to her thumb where it wouldn't rub off, yeah, with a little pen. And she drew a button on the back of her hand. And she said, right, every time you feel like you need a bit of security, like you need a mum hug, like you need a little bit of warmth, then I want you to press that button. And I'm going to do the same to me. So it's a little secret they had between them. And she said, every time I do it, I'm going to imagine you giving me a massive hug and wrapping your arms around me. I want you to do exactly the same. So they had this little thing going and it really saw her through her first week. And actually, you know, that bond between them, I think it was just really a special thing to do. So little things like that you can do with your children that might just be a secret thing between the two of you, but just gets them, like I said, feeling like they've got a bit of security when you're not around and when you're not there. So I think that tip was absolutely gorgeous.
That's an amazing tip, though. That's a wonderful opportunity to be creative. And it covers many of the things that you've talked about. It's connecting with your parent, understanding that emotions are contagious. So if you are excited about the future, it's contagious. Perhaps your teenager will become excited about the future. And also something that came out of that tip also where you've talked about consistently the importance of thought. So this teenager's thoughts are very important and playing a very, very important role.
Totally. I just think with our girls, just very quickly, just take one day at a time.
That's absolutely brilliant, Suzie. Thank you so much for being our guest on UIO. And we'll be looking out for your book with Dr. Andy Cope, A Girl's Guide to Being Fearless. We're excited about the future. And thank you so much for joining us.
That was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is a wrap for UIO on dealing with the new normal. Great show with lots of insight from Suzie Lavington. Thank you, girls, for listening, and thank you, God, for the opportunity to do the show. Today, I want to pray for all teenagers during this particularly bleak period in our history. I pray that they will find opportunities in the loss and bounce back with force, particularly those who have missed out on their graduation, exams, and other big life events. My prayers are for motivation and that this generation will be remembered for resilience and setting positive examples for a brighter new world. I ask these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Tune in next week for our next episode of UIO for some straight talk on how to talk about race. I will be sharing my thoughts on the matter. Meanwhile, hit me up on Twitter at Sonja Lewis, Instagram at Sonja D. Lewis, Facebook, sonjalewis.com/UIO-podcast. Tell me what you want to hear about and keep sending those questions on any of the episodes. Take care of you, inside out, and remember, it is UIO.